Rigoletto, the very famous opera by Maestro Giuseppe Verdi. In fact, one of the three most popular operas by Maestro Verdi, of course, along with La Traviata, which is also a super success, and as well as La Traviata, Traviata and Rigoletto are the two of the most represented operas worldwide each year. So Rigoletto and Traviata, the two of them, are in the top 10. And of course, provided that it is on stage so often, one could be led to think that it is an easy opera to sing. And that is certainly not the case. There are several technical difficulties in singing Rigoletto for each of the tesituras. The fragility of Gilda, for example, which, by the way, I would like to make use of this time to give you a recommendation. Once again, my positive karma is working on my side, and now I got the recommendation of this recording of the years 1960s, if I remember well. If not, I already put it on the screen. Yeah, 1960, which then again has a super stellar cast. We have, as we spoke of Gilda, the fragility of Gilda, we have Renata Scotto, which, by the way, I just learned that Renata Scotto started her career very, very young. She was barely 19 or 20 years when she started. Renata Scotto, one of the most important soprano voices of the past century, and that is in perfect vocal conditions for this recording. Then we move to the role of Il Duca, who in this case is sung also by the great tenor Alfredo Kraus, but we will get back to Alfredo Kraus and in general the role of Il Duca because that's the main purpose of today's recording. And we also have as the one of the three most important characters, Rigoletto himself, the baritone, and we have another one of the greatest baritone voices of the past century. We have Ettore Bastianini. Ettore Bastianini, who unfortunately ended his career. He died at an early age, so there were unfortunately not so many years or recordings of him inactive, but remains to be known that the voice of Ettore Bastianini is one of the most important baritone voices that we could witness past the past century. So, with three of the best voices of the past century, the result of Rigoletto, you could take for granted that this was, of course, a very successful Rigoletto recording, which of course it was, but for another reason. You do not only need to mix or to put together three extraordinary singers to make sure that everything goes fine. They also have to, in a way, because we have discussed it in some episodes, Katy and I, the singers have to be in the same tune. They have to understand each other. Otherwise, even if they are great voices, we feel that the opera really doesn't work. We don't really feel the love of, well, in this case, the love of more of obsession. If you go to our episode on Caro Nome, go to the episode on the Caro Nome from Gilda, who happens to be a very young girl. The love or obsession that Gilda has towards Il Duca, who doesn't really love her, but who plays Gilda's mind to his own interest, of course. And we have Rigoletto, who transitions from the early beginning of the opera to from being on the side of Il Duca to ending being against him on whom the whole vendetta is going to fall with the death of his own daughter Gilda. So that would be very, very basically put the plot of Rigoletto. But now going back to to the other point besides this recommendation, to the point of Il Duca, we have made in the past another entry uh, referring to Il Duca because it was mentioned when we clarified the misunderstanding that because it is sometimes said or more than often said that La Traviata requires three sopranos, which is absolutely a complete misunderstanding, not only on the voices, but a misunderstanding on what each of the types of soprano means. So there's people who says that there is a need of a coloratura soprano because of sempre libera, which of course it's not easy. There is a need for the first act. There is a need of lyrical soprano for the second act of La Traviata, and there is a need of for a dramatic soprano for the final act, which is completely out of place because neither is the first act of La Traviata for a coloratura soprano the same way that the final act is not for a dramatic soprano. It's a complete misunderstanding. It just has to be on the type of the voice, on the color that the soprano has to provide. The soprano has to appear lighter in the first act, and of course, she's required some ornaments, but it is not really a complete coloratura soprano as Olympia in Le Conte of Man. Of course, it's completely out of place. And of course, you don't need a Turandot for the final act of La Traviata. Just that her voice needs to convey the drama that she's about to die. And in a way, there is a similar misunderstanding with the role of Il Duca. What is the best voice to sing Il Duca di Mantova? Il Duca di Mantova has several challenges. In one hand, he has to sing often, but let's go telling by narrating where he has to participate. In Questo Quella, of course, a lyrical tenor can do, and sometimes better if he's a leggero voice because Il Questa Quella has to be very lightly uh, sung. A heavy voice will not work because it has to be believable that he's like playing, like making fun of questa quella per me pari sono tan 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 tan. Then, from that color of the voice, Il Duca de Mantova has to sing later a love duet with Gilda. In that love duet, purely lyrical tenor voice with the soprano, and that many times, if the tenor choices to do so, they both Gilda and Il Duca, go for a high note at the end of Addio. Addio, addio, speranza d'anima, sol tu sarai, sarai per me. So that's what happens in the next time he appears. A long duet, very lyrical, and if he chooses, he can go for a high note along with Gilda. So we are doing well. Many tenors with enough musicality and an average technique could be able to sing that first act of Rigoletto. The thing gets very complicated in the following act because now Il Duca has lost sight of Gilda. Then that's why he sings Ella mi fu rapita. And when he sings Ella mi fu rapita, that is a very complicated aria. I could say that yes, you need a solid voice, but you need moreover a very solvent technique. A singer who really knows how to use his voice because El Mi Fu Rapita is a very hard aria to sing. The tempo and the use of the overall construction on how the notes follow one after another in the hand of Maestro Verdi make this a very complicated area. And mostly by the end, the tenor, if he's too light and doesn't understand how to use his voice, he reaches the end very tired. And when he has to go, because it is not written, but singers usually do, perché lei mi invidiò, non invidiò. Usually also tenors can add a cavaletta by the, sorry, not a cavaletta. What I meant is that he adds an ornament that happens to be a cadenza that may put the tenor in trouble the same way as later with La Donna e Mobile. Too slow, or too purely depicted the notes, and it doesn't sound well. And right after the cadenza, he needs to decide if he wants to give a long high note. No, non invidio parto, and he needs to look comfortable doing it. That's this act which puts the tenor in trouble, because right after that, and many tenors cut this part, they cut there comes a very bright, beautiful cavatina when he learns that in fact it is his own men who captured or who kidnapped Gilda. So he celebrates with a very little known piece, because most tenors got it. Posente amor mi chiama, because in Posente amor mi chiama now requires a tenor with a very high tesitura, because many tenors go for a high D, not even a C. They can go higher, reaching a D, and so not many tenors have that note, or not many tenors are feeling that they will be able to do it, and so they skip that part. So that could be enough for the tenor in that second act. But then in the final act, he has to go for the very well known La Donna Mobile, which we already have an episode on the dissection of that aria, which asks them to have this lightness in unbelievable voice that doesn't sound too serious, that is in a way very cynic. So interpretative wise, it is difficult to do as well, so that people enjoy La donna è mobile, qual piuma al vento, muta d'accento. But many people don't pay attention to the fact that right after La donna è mobile, he has to go into that beautiful mix of voices that is called Bella Figlia dell'amore, which demands a very beautiful voice of a lyrical tenor. So, as you can see, the difficulty is not, again, that you also need two or three tenors for Rigoletto, but you, as in La Traviata, need to have a tenor who has a very solid technique, who understands his voice, and who can play with the different colors of his instrument. That's why there are way too many Rigolettos, or many tenors in Rigoletto. There are many Ducas, but there are very few who really sing it well. In this recording that I recommended you, we have Alfredo Kraus, a great Spanish tenor who is still very young. It is very recent that he already sang with Maria Callas, which gave him a boost in popularity, of course. So, to round the idea, an Alfredo Kraus who understands his voice very well, along with Ettore Bastianini and Renata Scotto, make a great cast. Not that it is the only one, but of course, it is very worth listening to.